Hola everyone, I'm Mehmet from Memli Coffee Lab, and today we are going to talk about books, but coffee books. Knowledge is really important. Over the past decade, I really collected a lot of all those coffee books, and here are pre-selected, which are to me the most important one, and I will kind of classify them into different sections based on the topic and also the level of difficulties or kind of expertise. Books in general I find really important because they are sort of the tool that helps to transmit a knowledge from a generation to a generation, from a country to another, from a person to another. So all kind of books are worth reading, but here I wanted to pre-select some and give you some insight about all those different books based on the topic, the subject, and since we are approaching holiday seasons, which one might be the best to kind of offer, if you were to offer. And let's start with those different books. So first section are kind of the generic books, the one that talk about coffee in general, a great introduction to coffee. Those are kind of books that any sort of coffee drinkers will enjoy to read more about coffee without getting too deep into the nerdy science of it. It's an ideal first coffee book that you can have, and it's also beautifully presented, often with a nice pictures and a great reading. So it's not like too complicated to read. Those will be perfect for a gift for coffee lovers who just dip their toe into coffee, and specialty coffee, or anyone who just drink coffee in general. Those is really similar to like a nice cooking book, for example. And here we have Real Fresh Coffee. This is a really nice book written by Jeremy Torts and Stephen Makatomia. I'm not sure if it's still available. That was back in 2015 or 16. Then we have the World Atlas of Coffee by James Hoffman, and I know that there's a second edition with a slightly more origins to it that I have at home. And also a new coffee book based on more brewing. But here, this is a really perfect example of a great book for beginners who just want to learn more about coffee, about the origins, few things about the drinks, about storage, about roasting, but nothing too crazy, nothing too intense in terms of science and geekiness. For the ones who want slightly more geekiness, the Best of Jim 7. This is from his blog from 2004 to 2015. This dives a little bit deeper into the science of coffee making. So I will suggest that for sort of not complete beginner, but ones who want to learn even more about those things like profiling, temperatures, etc., etc. And then for story lovers, The Coffee Man by Sasha Sestik is a really great read for really those ones who want more storytelling and a good emotional sort of impact in the coffee industry. So if you're really about like the classic kind of coffee books when it comes to kind of for beginners, I would suggest those two. And for more storytelling and more kind of beautiful and emotional stories, The Coffee Man. This one will be slightly more advanced. So this is kind of my general coffee knowledge section. Put it here. Let's move on. And this is the most important one, especially if you want to give a gift, right? You don't want to overload information. Now let's talk about something a little bit more serious. Let's talk about brewing, because that's what most of the people are, and in general, then we move more towards the industry. In terms of brewing, there's not a lot of book. Why? Because online has developed much more content than in books. To make a book, it requires a lot of time, and a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and a lot of money, right? So you need to make sure that whatever you are writing is kind of not set in stone, but almost. And because brewing is something that we're still learning about, well, we need clear science to back it off. And that's where for filter brewing, I recommend, of course, the Physics of Filter Brewing or Filter Coffee by Jonathan Gagné. It's really deep, it's really intense. In terms of formulas, you may need to kind of read it slowly because it's packed of full science of filter coffee. From the kettle to the filter to the agitation, every single aspect is taken into account in this book. For espresso, I think he's working on an espresso book as well, but as of now, the kind of more classic espresso, it will be the Professional Barista Handbook, which is a great book to start your espresso journey. Unfortunately, nowadays, with those new roasting style of espresso, this doesn't apply as much, but it sets a good foundation to begin with, right? From that, those aspects that is laid in this book, you can then play and then adventure yourself with all the kinds of coffee, all the kinds of parameters. But this, so far, is the kind of only book that really explains espresso a little bit better than filter coffee. But once again, for espresso, there's a lot online, and I will suggest once you get like the classic view of the espresso, get into more those modern aspect of it later on. But for filter, definitely that one. All right, that was our second session about filter. Industry, sensory, let's talk about a little bit on the industry. For green coffee, well, we have two books, Dear Coffee Buyer and The Green Coffee. Both are equally good. The information overlaps a little bit. Then it's just a matter of preferences. This is more like hardcover with nice pictures and infographic. This is more big pictures and slightly more very dense as well with good data about storage. But both are equally good. I really don't have any preference between those two coffees. All right. Roasting. Oh boy. Roasting. So to learn how to roast, you just have to roast. That's the most important thing. But we have a couple of books, and here I will recommend really two modulating coffee flavors. That really helped me kind of play with different phases, especially the development phase, and how sensory is impacted by that. Because once again, I'm really into the sensory aspect of it. Why when we modify X, Y, Z, it impacts the flavor. How I make it more more fruitier, more floral, more bitter, etc. And then coffee roaster best practices. I found great value in this book, especially when it comes to setting a system. Really helped me to nail every single roast and avoid any fluctuation to maintain consistency. The Roaster Companion is also a great book. However, sometimes if you follow like hardcore, you may be a little bit kind of overly too square. It's kind of it's good to sometimes play with the coffee, but this one lays a great foundation in terms of like a systematic approach rather than a more guideline approach. So I will suggest that one for a roasting. And for roasting, I highly recommend any papers from the Coffee Minds. Those are the ones I really kind of almost hardcorely follow, which implies that about 80% of the flavor creation and the flavor impacts are made by the color, then the development time, and then the time to first crack. So if you focus too much on those little elements, but the color is way off than the reference, it kind of doesn't matter. So three books really: the Coffee Roaster Best Practices by Scott Wayo, Modulating Coffee Flavors by Rob Hoos, and the papers by Morten Muncho from the Coffee Minds. I'll put everything in the link. Bit about sensory. Sensory is the same thing as roasting, you need to practice, but I will pick the Neurogastronomy and How the Brain Creates Flavor and Why It Matters by Gordon Shepard. This is really a great book to understand why you are tasting such a thing. it's really about the mind and how your brain creates sensory images and etc. and etc. So it can be, it's not really focused on coffee, but it's focused on sensory. And so this is my go-to when it comes to flavor or sensory or taste and learning how our brain interprets that. That's the best book for that subject, because we have a kind of coffee tasting books it's really generic, and unfortunately it doesn't, I mean, you need to practice. That's the most important thing. You can read as many books as you can. If you don't practice sensory and roasting, it really doesn't matter. But even if you practice, sometimes understanding your brain, that's what I like about this book. Last but not least, and what I found just really important ones, is about the industry. So we have What I Know About Running Coffee Shops by Colin Harman. Excellent book if you want to run a coffee shop. Yeah, they have some really nice guidelines, nice framework to work on, like, you know, inventory, staff, etc., etc. But that's more towards coffee shop management. And last but not least, which is for me the most important book, I would say, is Cheap Coffee by Colin, Behind the Curtain of the Global Coffee Trade. That's what helped us really understand what's going on, and he explained really well how the economy of coffee works, how it impacts the producer. And it's not just a kind of depressing book showcasing all the issues. He also proposed different kind of solutions, ideas, where at our level, wherever you are a coffee lover, a coffee enthusiast, a barista, a shop owner, a roaster, a green buyer, how you can make an impact at your own level, because we all can make an impact so that the entire supply chain can thrive, right? And this is, to me, really the most important one, because all those things, really, all those books brings knowledge. All those books kind of have a goal to improve the quality. The whole idea of those books is to make a better cup of coffee, to drink better cup of coffee. But it doesn't matter if the producers are not rewarded for that and are not paid fairly for that. So it's cool to make a great coffee. It's cool to roast excellent coffee. It's great to source ethical and to source coffee that stays longer in the shelf. It's amazing to brew great coffee with all those filter characteristics, and it's great to know how to taste coffee and how our brain works. But if it's not relevant, if it doesn't set in line with the producers and how coffee is produced at the first place, it kind of doesn't matter. All those things really are kind of building upon a very, very fragile pillar. And the idea of this book is to strengthen those pillars so that all those books and the future ones are relevant. So, to sum up, let me get a sip. The first, really, if you were to give a gift to someone, I will pick the roller glass of coffee. For the geeks, I will go with the physics of filter coffee. But when I say geeks, it's not like just shy geek. I'm talking about hardcore geek here. For the other geeks, this one is not bad at all. And for roasting, I will roast. That's it. For sensory, the neurogastronomy. And the last but not least, if you have one coffee, if you're in the industry, or if you want to learn more about the coffee in general, Cheap Coffee, those will be the ones that I suggest. If I were to really remove all my books and keep only 4, those will be the ones. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Maybe another book review. Let's see.